Big corporations don't have to file BOI. They don't have to report their information, but ultimately Main Street businesses, the ones that are the backbone of America, we're the ones that have to do this reporting, but the bigger ones don't.
The Small Business Rundown is the official podcast of the National Federation of Independent Business, the member-driven voice of small business. NFIB and our members advocate to keep America's small businesses strong and independent in Washington, D.C., all 50 states, and the nation's courts.
Welcome to the Small Business Rundown, a bi-weekly podcast with information on independent businesses' victories and challenges in Washington, D.C. and state capitals. I'm Jeff Brabant, NFIB's Vice President of Federal Government Relations, sitting in as guest host this week. Today, we'll be covering beneficial ownership information reporting and how it affects the privacy of small businesses. Joining me to discuss beneficial ownership information reporting and its impact on small business is NFIB member Steve Flanagan. We're also joined by NFIB's Director of Federal Government Relations, Josh McLeod. Thank you both for your insight today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having us on.
Josh, this issue of beneficial ownership information reporting, which is often referred to as BOI, has been a top focus for NFIB for years, even before it was signed into law with the Corporate Transparency Act. Can you give us some background on why it's such an important issue for small businesses?
Absolutely. This is such a huge issue because it affects so many small businesses. In total, the government projects 32.6 million small businesses will register with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, which is the law enforcement arm of U.S. Treasury. And I mean, that's broad enough in itself to be concerning. However, we're concerned about the privacy of our members' information on this website and the fact that local, state, federal, international law enforcement and intelligence agencies don't have to get a warrant in order to access this information. So we've got a number of concerns. It's broad. The statute is very burdensome on small businesses, and also data privacy is a major concern.
Thank you, Josh. Steve, we're grateful you can join us for a few minutes today. Can you talk to us a bit about your business?
Absolutely. So I'm the president and founder of Blue Light Investigations, which is a private investigations firm located out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We handle anything from criminal investigations to due diligence to service of process, things like that. So we're very involved in the legal landscape.
Thanks. And what has your experience been with beneficial ownership reporting?
Not good, if I can be honest. I understand the concept, right? The intent of transparency, combating money laundering, terrorist funding, corruption. I understand that aspect of BOI, beneficial ownership. However, the language is ambiguous to me. And as Josh brought up, there's so many ways that this can go wrong. I also think that not enough probable cause has been established. I mean, you're putting a blanket probable cause statement on all businesses to say, we don't need a warrant for this information. We're just going to collect it. And if you don't comply, we're going to fine you and threaten you with prison time. I think that's government overreach in the highest order. So when we look at the Fourth Amendment and probable cause and the amount of businesses that have to file, it's mainly targeted to small businesses, 20 employees or less. Big corporations don't have to file BOI. They don't have to report their information. But ultimately, Main Street businesses, the ones that are the backbone of America, we're the ones that have to do this reporting, but the bigger ones don't. So not only are you doing a blanket statement without enough probable cause to impede on somebody's Fourth Amendment, but now you're excluding certain individuals because of how big their business is. And that doesn't really make sense to me, which goes to the ambiguity of the language in BOI.
I think that's an excellent point, especially considering that businesses have to report this to the federal government. And the federal government does not need a subpoena or warrant to access the information. They can access it without probable cause, as you stated. Can you share with us what concerns you may have with your personally identifiable information being stored in another government database?
Yes. So I kind of look at this database as the same way the Supreme Court has outlined gun ownership. The Supreme Court has ruled it unconstitutional for any federal, local law enforcement agency or intelligence group to have such a database on gun owners because it infringes on not only the Second Amendment, but the Fourth Amendment. I look at this as the same way. It infringes on our Fourth Amendment privacy. The privacy concerns that I have is not only the overreach, but exposing private individuals' information. We look at, they say that this database is secure, right? But we look at what happened to Experian. When Experian was hacked, that was supposed to be private, but that got hacked and information got released. I think the ambiguity in the language for key managers doesn't sit right with me. So somebody that doesn't necessarily have an ownership interest in the business now has to report their personal information for what? They don't own the business. They're just a key manager in the day-to-day operations, but now their information has to be tied to my business when I'm the principal. I think it's overreach. I think it's ambiguous. And I think there's a huge administrative burden on small businesses.
So, Steve, it's my understanding you have a military and a police background. Can you talk a little about that and talk about how you might think from a national security perspective this law may not be totally necessary?
So, as I said, I understand the intent of BOI, right? I understand what they're trying to do. I just don't think that it's where it needs to be. As a former military member and former law enforcement officer, I've worked for the government. I'm still involved with the government in blue light investigations. It doesn't meet thresholds. Me as a law enforcement officer would need to establish probable cause to write a warrant to have banking information. But now the federal government steps in and says, well, we're just going to overstep this because we don't need it. We don't need it. You guys do for what you're doing in your investigation, but we don't. That's not the law of the land. That impedes on the constitutional rights that we as Americans have. So my Fourth Amendment goes out the window just because I own a business, and now you want to run a database on my business so you have access at free will to my information. That's not how this works.
I appreciate that insight, Steve. Now we'll take a quick break.
NFIB is America's leading small business organization, fighting for small business owners across the nation. Because of a victory made possible by NFIB members and lawmakers who supported making the 20% small business deduction permanent, more than 33 million small businesses will avoid a massive tax hike this year. We thank the administration, Congress, and small business advocates for making the small business deduction permanent to protect small businesses from a massive tax increase. To learn more, go to smallbusinessdeduction.com.
Welcome back. Josh, can you talk to me about the latest developments with BOI reporting and where we are in repealing this mandate?
Absolutely. I think we're really grateful that President Trump in March came out and called BOI invasive, egregious, and economic menace. And in doing so, he directed Treasury to exempt all U.S. small businesses from this requirement. This is obviously a huge win for small businesses. However, we're concerned what the long term looks like here, which is why we need Congress to really step in and codify what the Trump administration is trying to do to exempt U.S. businesses, destroy the data of U.S. businesses that have already filed, or just outright repeal the entire statute, which is something NFIB has been pushing for a number of years. We have legislation called the Repealing Big Brother Overreach Act in Congress that would do just that, to repeal the Corporate Transparency Act. We've got a lot of support. There's 31 Senate co-sponsors on that bill. There's 166 House of Representatives co-sponsors. So we're continuing to push legislation to eliminate this entire mandate for small businesses.
So, Josh, you said that President Trump has exempted American small businesses, but you're concerned about what a future administration may do. What may a future administration do?
That's correct. I mean, it would be very easy for a future administration to completely rewrite what President Trump is trying to do. They could even expand reporting because the statute is so ambiguous. So we are very concerned that unless Congress steps in and provides long-term relief, that this will only be a short-term victory.
It's understood. And Josh, we know that millions of small business owners filed their private information before the reporting requirement was blocked. What are the dangers of this information sitting in FinCEN's database?
As of December 20th, approximately 11 million out of the projected 32.6 million small businesses had registered with FinCEN. That information is just sitting there in this database. which is why we want Congress and the Trump administration to destroy the data of U.S. businesses that have already filed their BOI.
Who can access that data in the database?
It's law enforcement, it's intelligence agencies, not just U.S., but foreign law enforcement and intelligence agencies. So a lot of access to this database.
Okay, interesting stuff. Steve, can you share with us how your business might be affected by the privacy risks associated with this database?
I operate in the realm of confidential, right? So I guess the risks for me are just exposing my personal data, because the amount of information that they want, like my home address, my work address, things like that, really expose what I do. It's dangerous, to say the least, for some organizations and some companies, even law firms, right? If lawyers on the other side, their opposing counsel doesn't like what happened, or their client doesn't like what happened, and now we have access to personal addresses, we have access to business information. I mean, I think in what I do and how I find people, I get adequate information off of the Secretary of State website or the websites that have business reporting. I get adequate information off of that already. I don't know why we need more information than what's already out there.
Thank you, Steve. Josh, we know that those who complied with BOI reporting experienced significant difficulties. What were some of the challenges small businesses faced when filing their information?
Yeah, some filings are very complex. There could be 10, there could be hundreds of different separate filings, which we've heard that from a number of our members. So there's a huge cost with that, especially if you are hiring a CPA or a lawyer to assist with that. So this comes with a huge cost. There's also the added burden of any time information changes, that you have 30 days to update that information. So let's say you get a new driver's license. You've got 30 days to update it. And I think, as Steve mentioned, the expansive definition of who has to file brought in managers of, say, a restaurant into this reporting regime. Not really sure that was the intent of Congress, but that is certainly how it is being, or it was being applied. So I think we are very concerned. We've also had a number of small businesses that have used scam filing assistance companies. Do a simple Google search for BOI filings, and the top 4 sponsored searches were not FinCEN. That we did that search a few months ago. So I think we've heard from a number of small businesses that have been unfortunately scammed for, they didn't even finish their filings, but they were still charged hundreds of dollars to use those services.
Josh, if you're a small business with multiple LLCs, do you have to file just once or for each LLC?
No, each one is going to be a separate filing, each LLC. And so especially if you think about in real estate, you could have each property that you own could be a separate LLC. That could be, hundreds of separate filings. So it is quite burdensome when you think about just how expansive this reporting is.
What can businesses affected by this mandate do to take action?
Just like Steve is doing, we need small businesses to continue to go to their members of Congress and say, hey, you've got to step up. You've got to repeal. You've got to codify whatever the Trump administration is doing. We need long-term certainty to provide relief here. The last thing we want to do is drop the ball here, and then in 4 or 8 years, we're back at the table trying to fight this thing again. We want to get this over the goal line right now.
And Josh, what's the overall message small businesses want members of Congress to know about this?
Well, I can speak for our members. They are enraged by the Corporate Transparency Act and the requirements that this law mandates on them. I think in addition to it being incredibly burdensome for 32.6 million small businesses, they've got a number of constitutional concerns that Steve has highlighted very acutely, and I think that's why they are so enraged by this requirement and why they fight so hard for Congress to really repeal and provide them long-term relief. It's just another piece of red tape and compliance costs. They're already overwhelmed with the red tape and compliance burdens. They don't want additional responsibilities and burdens. So I think that's why they fight this issue so hard and want Congress to really come through and provide them long-term certainty.
Thank you. And Steve, shifting to you, do you have anything you would like to close with on this particular issue?
I just think that the government overreach with BOI is way too far. I think that Josh is absolutely right. More businesses have to step up and say enough is enough with these things. I mean, the administrative effects alone, I didn't know people were getting scammed like Josh had mentioned. But at the same time, the administrative costs for me to do my business when I have partners and supervisors and stuff like that, lead investigators, it becomes burdensome. And it's to the point where I view it as ridiculous. I don't think we're doing enough due process with BOI to highlight and pinpoint where the issues are. I think they're just trying to do a blanket database for all businesses, and that's not the way the law works in America, at least not from my understanding. So I think we need to come together and rally to stand behind NFIB and fight this.
Thank you, Steve. Josh, do you have any final thoughts?
Just please reach out to your members of Congress. Keep fighting on this issue. We cannot drop the ball on it.
Thank you. As we wrap up, we've taken an in-depth look at some of the major concerns surrounding beneficial ownership information reporting and how it could impact millions of small businesses if it's not permanently repealed with the previously submitted data destroyed. There is still work to be done on this ongoing issue, so you can continue to stay up to date on the latest developments with the links in today's show notes. You'll also find resources to connect with your lawmakers and let them know how your business could be at risk if they don't protect small businesses from this invasive and unconstitutional law. Looking ahead, if there's anything you'd like us to cover on an upcoming podcast, please email podcast@nfib.org. Now, I want to thank you, the listeners, for joining us on today's Small Business Rundown. We'll be back every 2 weeks bringing you news and analysis from Washington, D.C. and state capitals so that you, whether you're a business owner or a supporter of one, can continue to blaze a trail.
The Small Business Rundown is brought to you by NFIB, the voice of small business. You can find us at nfib.com and on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.